Shadows twist where whispers grow. The edge of light begins to flow. A world unseen through fractured glass, where futures meet the echoes past. Step closer now, the veil is thin. A riddle starts where dreams begin. The experimental medium calls your name. Nothing here will be the same.
Welcome to the Experimental Medium Podcast.
Great to be diving into this today.
We're looking at something really fascinating, spirit teachings, and how claims of mediumship get assessed, maybe even validated.
And we're focusing on a really significant case, Mrs. Piper. She was absolutely pivotal in psychical research history.
Right. It touches on those huge questions, doesn't it? About consciousness, life after death.
Things that make you think. And it definitely demands, well, both an open mind and some careful analysis.
Absolutely. And we've got some really interesting source material for this. We're drawing from excerpts from both sides of the veil, a personal experience by Anne Manning Robbins.
And crucially, it includes a foreword by William James, the philosopher and psychologist.
That's a big name to have involved.
It really is. His endorsement, calling the manuscript a genuine record of moral and religious experience, well, it adds significant weight, doesn't it?
It suggests this wasn't just seen as idle curiosity.
Exactly. It was treated as a serious inquiry, exploring potentially deeper meanings.
So our mission today, really, is to try and understand the kind of spirit communications that came through Mrs. Piper, mainly through Anne Robbins' account.
And also to look closely at the evidence. What convinced people like Robbins and even James that these communications might actually be valid?
Okay, let's start at the beginning then, with Robbins' first encounters.
Right. This all kicks off around 1888. Spiritism, psychical research, these were getting a lot of attention back then.
And Anne Manning Robbins got interested.
She did. And pretty early on, she ended up moving in circles that included Mrs. Piper.
So she started attending sittings.
Yes, including some with Dr. Richard Hodgson. He's a name that pops up a lot here.
Hodgson? He was with the American Society for Psychical Research.
That's him, a central figure. And his approach, well, he wanted to be rigorous. He was trying to apply scientific methods, or what passed for them then.
So skepticism was involved.
Oh, definitely. A healthy dose, like many researchers at the time. He wasn't just accepting things wholesale.
Robbins mentions attending a sitting for Hodgson back in March 1888.
And it's interesting to hear about Hodgson's early methods, trying to figure out Mrs. Piper's state during trance.
Using harmless experiments, she calls them.
Yeah, things like testing physical responses. Sounds basic now, but they were trying to get a handle on her consciousness level.
Trying to separate the medium from, well, whatever else might be happening.
Exactly, applying that scientific lens, to something very, very strange.
And then Robbins talks about more sittings in May and June 1888, specifically for Hodgson.
Right. These were focused on the Finuit personality, one of the main spirit communicators, or controls, in Piper's early phase.
So Hodgson was really zoning in on Finuit then.
Yes, these sittings were key for his initial assessments. But what's really telling is something Robbins notes later.
What's that?
Around 1900, Hodgson himself reflected on how much his own understanding had changed, about how carefully you needed to treat psychics, the conditions required.
So he realized his early approach maybe wasn't ideal.
He essentially admitted some of it seemed like mere folly later on. It shows a real evolution in his thinking.
That's quite honest, isn't it? Learning as you go.
It really is, especially in such a tricky field. It shows a commitment to finding truth over just sticking to your guns.
Robbins also gives us a sense of his motivation, his intense eagerness, she says, to find out what's on the other side of the veil.
Yeah, and she stresses his dedication, that he wasn't in it for money, but for the work itself, the passion.
That really paints a picture of these early researchers. It wasn't just academic for them.
No, it felt more like a fundamental quest, exploring the big questions.
Okay, let's jump forward a bit. To around 1897, Robbins describes a big shift in Mrs. Piper's mediumship,
Yes, the Dr. Finuate control started to fade and others took over.
a changing of the guard, so to speak.
Pretty much. It marked a real transition. A new group of spirit personalities seemed to be managing things.
Suggesting maybe a different kind of trance or communication.
Potentially, yes. Robbins introduces us to them names like Imperator, who seemed to be the leader.
And Rector.
Rector acted as the main scribe, the interpreter. Then there were others. Prudence, Grosson, the doctor.
So a whole team.
It seemed like it. These names became central. And having this structure, well, maybe it allowed for more complex communication, you know?
And sometimes people they knew who had recently died would show up too, like George Pelham or F.W.H. Myers.
Exactly. Which, for the researchers, added another potential layer for validation. Could they recognize their personalities? Did they know things only the deceased would know?
Robbins also mentions William Stanton Moses' book, Spirit Teachings.
Right, written under the name M.A. Oxon.
And it features teachings from a personality also called Imperator.
Yes, which raises a fascinating point. Was this the same entity communicating through Moses and Piper? Or is Imperator more like a title or a type of spiritual energy accessed by different mediums?
Interesting question.
Definitely something to ponder.
So Robbins has her first sitting with this new group in December 1899.
And remarkably, an old friend of hers, Hiram Hart, apparently communicates, but this time through writing, not voice.
Wow, that must have been powerful for her personally.
You'd think so. Seeing a known person communicate, even differently, could reinforce belief, especially with the control changing.
Okay, let's talk about the actual teachings coming through this new group. Robbins mentions descriptions of life on the other side.
Yes, accounts of the spirit world. They often vary, of course, but you see recurring themes.
Yeah.
Structure, familiar elements maybe existing differently, energetically.
And Rector played a key role as the interpreter.
Robbins described him as dignified, helpful. His communications often aimed at guidance, elevating her understanding.
Like a spirit guide.
That's a common concept, yes. Rector as an intermediary, maybe translating messages from others in the group.
And Robbins felt this group knew about her personal life, her affairs.
She did. And that, of course, brings us right back to validation. If they knew things Piper couldn't know, where did that info come from?
It's the central question, isn't it?
Absolutely.
They also use the term light for psychics or mediums.
Yeah, light often symbolizes spiritual awareness, clarity, the ability to channel energy. Calling mediums lights highlights their role as conduits.
And this group, Imperator and the others, sometimes tried to reach Robbins through other people, less developed psychics.
Apparently so. Suggesting they were actively trying to maintain contact even if Piper wasn't available, and maybe hinting at an ability to influence other sensitives.
Robbins tells a really striking story about a sick acquaintance.
Yes. The spirit group showed intense interest, kept saying she had important work to do in the future.
Even though everyone could see she was dying.
Exactly. Which brings in prediction, another complex aspect. Their insistence, given her condition, must have raised questions about their foresight.
And the acquaintance did pass away in March 1902.
Yes. And after that, Robbins noted a period of silence from the communicators.
Why the silence, do you think?
Hard to say. Maybe adjustment on their side, related to the death. For Robbins, it must have been a confusing time, especially given those predictions.
But the silence didn't last forever.
No. Communications picked up again in May 1903, and a new name emerged. General Martin.
Okay, a new player.
And this leads to a really pivotal sitting, December 23rd, 1903.
What happened?
General Martin identifies himself clearly, Augustus Pearl Martin. He'd been Robbins's business associate, her employer even, died about 21 months earlier.
Okay.
And one of the first things he supposedly asks is if they can still manage to write a book together.
A book.
Yes, a project they had actually discussed before he died.
Wow. Okay, that's specific.
Extremely specific. For someone listening, that feels like strong potential evidence for consciousness, intentions, carrying over. He picks up right where they left off, basically.
And the sittings continued, focusing on this book.
Yes, guidance related to the book project. Robbins quotes him being very insistent. It has got to be. It is a thing that I am bound to have.
That determination must have seemed very characteristic of the man she knew.
You'd imagine so. It adds that personal, emotional weight to the evidence. It feels like him.
Robbins also mentioned her own feeling while writing, like she wasn't alone.
Yes, a sense of cooperation. Subtle influences. She's careful, not claiming full inspiration, but feeling like unseen friends were collaborating.
That subjective experience is part of it too, then.
Definitely. Hard to measure, but significant for the person involved.
Then tragedy strikes the research community itself. Dr. Hodgson dies in December 1905.
Yes, the man who started investigating Piper so rigorously.
And then messages started coming through Piper, attributed to Hodgson.
That's what Robbins reports, suggesting his continued involvement from the other side.
Which must have been intensely interesting and probably scrutinized, given who he was.
Absolutely. Messages from a seasoned psychical researcher post-mortem, that carries a unique weight.
And there was that striking detail about the Christmas card.
Oh, right. The card Hodgson had mailed before he died, but which Robbins received after his death.
That feels very tangible, almost spooky.
It's a powerful anecdote, isn't it? A physical object crossing that boundary, seemingly showing awareness, continued. Very persuasive, personally.
The communicators also seemed aware of things happening in the physical world in real time.
Yes. Robbins mentions an instance where details of a surgery happening to another sitter were relayed accurately during her sitting.
Suggesting access to information beyond the room, beyond normal senses.
Exactly. Hinting at some external knowledge source or a different kind of awareness during trance.
And then there were all the personal recognitions. General Martin recalling specific things.
Conversations they'd had, poems they both knew, family details, even a grandchild's nickname. And personal habits.
Things the medium, Mrs. Piper, wouldn't know.
Presumably not, especially intimate details like nicknames or private jokes. That's often seen as strong evidence.
And he could even identify objects in Robin's room when a sitting was held there.
Apparently so, demonstrating awareness of the immediate physical surroundings, another potential layer of validation.
Plus references to past events, relationships, again unknown to Piper, but verifiable by Robbins.
Crucial point. If the information is verifiable and outside the medium's knowledge, it makes explanations like fraud or guessing much harder.
And finally, the consistency. The personalities, the way they express themselves, stayed the same over time.
Right. That consistency helps build a picture of distinct individuals, not just random thoughts, but coherent personalities maintaining their characteristics.
So pulling this together, what did they say the spirit world was like, and how did communication work?
Well, the descriptions included things like streets of pearl, real homes, gardens, even spiritual bathing for purification.
Symbolic, perhaps, but giving a sense of the realm.
Exactly, offering glimpses. The purification idea fits many spiritual traditions about transition after death.
And the mechanism. How did thoughts get across?
They mention ether. Remember that old concept of a medium filling space? And an ethereal cord linking the spirit to the medium.
The cord is a psychic link.
That's the idea. Facilitating the transfer of thought, energy. It's a common metaphor in spiritualist writings.
They also talked about different levels or spheres
Yes.
in the spirit world.
Yes, and spirits progressing through them. And advanced spirits like Imperator acting as governors or facilitators for communication.
Suggesting an organized structure over there.
That's the picture painted, a hierarchy, different levels, guides helping out.
And they stressed the importance of the medium state. The light.
Absolutely. Keeping the light clear, the medium's mental and physical well-being was seen as vital for good communication.
Highlighting the limitations, that physical conditions mattered.
It underscores how delicate mediumship was seen to be. Quality could depend on the medium's state, maybe even conditions on the spirit side.
Okay, so as we wrap up this exploration, what are the main takeaways from the spirit teachings described here?
Well, the core messages seem to be: consciousness continues after death. There's a structured spirit world. Communication is possible. And guidance is available from higher beings.
And the validation methods we discussed.
We saw accurate recall of unknown personal details, fulfilled predictions, though sometimes questionable, consistent personalities and memories, and awareness of real-time events.
Things that, for Robbins and others, added up.
They clearly found it compelling, even if we view it with different questions today.
So for listeners reflecting on all this, what should they keep in mind?
Well, first, just the sheer implications, right, for how we understand consciousness, death, maybe even reality itself. Could there be communication across dimensions?
And the need for balance.
Definitely. Healthy skepticism, but also openness, not dismissing things just because they're outside our usual box.
And remembering the personal impact. For someone like Robbins, this wasn't abstract.
No, these were deeply personal interactions, seemingly providing specific, verifiable proof of connection. That personal element is huge.
Okay, here's a final thought to leave everyone with. How do those detailed personal validations, the specific memories, the nickname, the book project, how do they challenge your conventional understanding of death and reality? What further questions does that raise for you about connection beyond the physical?
Something to really mull over.
Thank you for joining us today on the Experimental Medium Podcast.
Shadows twist where whispers grow. The edge of light begins to flow. A world unseen through fractured glass, where futures meet the echoes past. Step closer now, the veil is thin. A riddle starts where dreams begin. The experimental medium calls your name. Nothing here will be the same.